The future of regiments is changing, and it's changing quite drastically. In this video, we're going to talk about the new developer update, where he discusses how he's changing operations, the delays of the DLC, the new TAC aids, and as well as the new mobile infantry that will be transported by helicopter. So we're going to start with operations because that is the cornerstone of regiments, and it's how you play the game in a single player if you aren't going to play the skirmish mode. So the developer talks about how labor intensive it is to make an operation for each new nation. As you see, regiments released with 7 operations in general, and each DLC he was planning on adding 1 to 2 operations per nation. So if we take a look at the Central Forces DLC that was going to release with Canada, Czechoslovakia, and France, that's 6 operations if he stuck with that plan. So obviously that's basically regiments all over again. You get 6 operations, and then you have your original 7, and it sells for a lot, I believe, cheaper. He's not going to be selling the DLCs for 30 USD, but he has provided some for free. So what the path forward is, according to the developer, is going to be procedural generation. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of procedural generation. I think it has its moments where it truly shines. It does add replayability, but it also adds a lot of monotony, in my opinion. Any procedural generated game I've ever played feels really, really static to me, and it's interesting. I want to see it implemented in regiments. I want to see how it does and kind of how the system works. He says that is what's taking up a good portion of his time. As far as the Central Forces DLC, the France, Czechoslovakia, and Canada is going to be delayed into 2024. At least that's what it sounds like. I know we've been kind of starved of regiments content, but the last 2 or 3 DLCs have been free. Like, we've gotten the second wave DLC, and then I believe we've gotten some more Northern Forces as well. And he's currently saying he's going to release the Netherlands in autumn, so it should be free, if I remember correctly, according to his update. So we will get one more free DLC, and obviously all the bug fixes and updates have been free, but the actual DLC is going to be delayed and will obviously be paid, and would lean more into the procedural generation side of things. I expect that to be probably delayed until like June of next year, because it's going to be quite tasking to, one, he still needs to finish up the Canada models. Then he needs to program the procedural generation. He's also working on the TAC aids as well as the balancing of the helicopters. And he says all of that is basically, other than the Canadian forces, are mostly done. But if he's going to go this route of procedural generation, then it's definitely going to be delayed. He mentions mobile defense. I see mobile defense right here. I don't know why that came up. It's just briefly talked about. It doesn't really go much into it. He says it's like an optional feature list that people are interested in and that they want to see. So let me know down in the comments what you think of that. The new TAC aid that's coming out is called Combat Air Patrol. And we talked about this in my last Regiments video, where I discuss how the combat air patrols are going to work. So what you're going to do is you're going to deploy this TAC aid, and it's going to basically dominate the skies, and then that's going to lean heavily into the no helicopters, no aircraft. If the AI calls in aircraft or AI calls in helicopters, obviously the TAC aid means they're going to engage those vehicles and those units. And that's something that would be really, really cool to see. I want to see if it's functioning. Hopefully we get like a good little video of it soon. I mean, as far as regiments go, it's a very well done game, so the delays don't bother me too much. And we've gotten plenty of free DLCs. The new infantry models, I haven't seen those yet, but the way they're being transported across the map. So now we're going to talk about basically air assault formations and how Black Hawks are going to be incorporated into regiments. And I talk about the Black Hawks because he shows us an image of them. What's going to happen is you're going to call these units from off map. From what it looks like, they're going to fly in and they're going to dismount infantry units, and then from there those helicopters are going to take the safest, so quote unquote safest path out, where they will then be able to redeploy units. I don't think they're going to fly in. I'm not quite sure how those units are going to retreat off the battlefield. I would be interested in to know that, like, are the helicopters going to fly back in, pick them up, or are they going to just move forward and then just come back in off the battlefield and get into a position. And I'm not I hope I'm not being extremely difficult on the developer. I'm really excited. He's provided us with a lot of free DLCs. For me, the procedural generation is always hit and miss, and I know that's just who I am. So I'm excited to see what happens. I'm excited to see how he implements it. Hopefully we get a video of how it works. I do think it will add a lot of replayability. I'm interested to see how it plays out across the maps, because as you see, if we zoom way far out, a lot of our battles mainly take place in the center part of the map, so balancing might be a bit of an issue. But if he starts, I would like to see like maybe these objectives get like moved around as well, hopefully in the future. Like, right, we have hillsides, maybe like paths along this. I mean, everything doesn't need to be 100% balanced, but I understand if it is. If we're just playing like the same operations across the same 4 maps, that would be a bit upsetting in my opinion. So obviously the maps aren't going to be procedural generated, but hopefully we can get some things with the objectives like Alpha, Delta, Echo moved around just to see how it's done. It's still quite a ways off, well more than 8 months, and I'm sure he's well past the planning stage. Let's see what we can call in next. Do we need a recon vehicle? Let's get our air support online. We're going to go that way. And I really think the developer has done a bunch of good things for us. He talks about being in a heavily sanctioned nation when he brings this up, when I was reviewing this and reviewing the updates. And so he has to overcome those challenges as well. We don't have any smoke. You're getting shot from the flanks. You're facing forward. What are these? ATGMs out. What am I facing down right here? These look to be T-72s. Are these T-72s correct? Yep, turret popped. Obviously a T-72 if the turret pops like that. Alright, they're smoking and they're retreating. Let me know what you think about the future of Regiments. Do you think the game's going to continue to stand on its own? Are you excited for the free DLCs? Are you worried about the balancing issues that are going to be presented with the new TAC aids, like the Combat Air Patrol? Are you excited to play with some of the newer additions to the game, i.e. the Black Hawk helicopters, which I'm going to check out here in a moment? And that should be well into 2024. So Regiments is a bit of a slow burn game in my opinion. We have gotten lots of free DLCs, but a lot of the major updates do seem to be a bit of a slow burn. And if we're only talking about the 1 TAC aid and we're already hitting delays, then I highly doubt we're going to hit those 2 new DLCs anytime soon. And I think a lot of things are going to start making its way to the sequel. If you agree with me, let me know. I do think we're kind of hitting that point where things do go to the sequel. I mean, the game's almost 2 or 3 years old, so it's really going to depend on how committed the developer is to Regiments 1, and if they really want to transition from Regiments just being, because it's not an early access game, right? It's a 1.0 release, and once you have that 1.0 release, then you can kind of move things to a new like Regiments 2 or whatever you want to call it, Companies 2. I think that might be the next step for us. We might get 1 DLC, and then I would probably suggest it's time to start working towards Regiments 2, because the game would be around like 2 or 3 years old at that point, and then we can start getting some graphical updates and things like that, and maybe work on how the game changes and evolves right there, because we're talking about major gameplay shifts, especially with procedural generation. So that's kind of my thoughts on everything. I hope you enjoyed the video. I really enjoy these models. I'm excited to see the Canadian units. And if you like this video, like, comment, subscribe. The future of Regiments is changing, guys. Peace.